This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 373 for the week of January 25th, 2015. What up, hey-os? Welcome back again, 2 weeks in a row. Imagine that, to Kanzenshuu,
the podcast,
an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site.
Kanzenshuu.
That's right, we cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. What a treat to be doing this 2 weeks in a row. Actually, the last episode took me a little extra time to edit, so as I'm recording this, the previous episode's only been online for like 3 days, so it feels kind of weird doing this so soon after. My name is Mike, VegettoEX. Joining me, swapping out one dude for one of the other dudes, I got Heath. Mr. Hujio, sir, what's up?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm hoping your microphone's going to be a little better than Julian's last week.
Well, I'm hoping that too. Although, I do love when it happens to Julian because everyone likes to ridicule him just a little bit.
Robo Julian's pretty good.
Yeah. But I'm glad that you guys kind of kicked the rust off of everything so that I can just come right in and have no problems.
Been WD-40, it's all set to go.
Does that work?
I don't know. I would not recommend spraying that over the recording equipment. Please don't do that. Heath, it's good to have you with me. We're going to be doing a couple things this episode. We, of course, have news. Even though it's only been a couple days since the last episode went up, we are hitting that period of new movie news where pretty much every day there's going to be something. So we got that for you. And then we're going to be diving back into our 30th anniversary magazine to give you some content conversations. Heath, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, even though I know I'm not wrong. It was a great opportunity, that magazine, to actually sit down, do some of the research, some of the things we wanted to do, and we're going to be mining that for content because it's stuff we would have been doing on the podcast anyway. It's just now we have it written and all sketched out in front of us. So people kind of get to see our behind the scenes magic of how we do some outline things, except now it's presented in a magazine first.
Yeah, you usually don't want to see our outlines because they only really make sense to us. So true. Luckily we were able to put this all together. You can actually see things from our perspective a little bit, but we actually make them readable, which is always a good thing.
So we're going to talk it out a little more. This episode, Heath, I want to dive into one of the articles you wrote that was about filler material in the series and how things were catching up. There's a lot of myths that have been said about the series and when things were catching up the most. And a lot of that's kind of true, but the fact that you sat down and lived in a spreadsheet for a while to actually get the data there is
Excel
really cool.
Can be your friend and your enemy.
That's right. So we'll be diving into that for our topic this week. At the top of the show here, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, has any cool Dragon Ball stuff happened in the last week? I did recently get the fourth Kai ending, well, the Buu arc Kai ending, and we've been doing a little driving the last couple days, so Mary's actually heard them all straight through for the first time, and she really liked them. I was kind of surprised and not entirely surprised that Mary liked all the songs. As we were listening to them, she was saying how they sound very not Japanese in a way, and I pressed her on, like, what do you mean by that? And it's just, it sounds like there's a lot more of the American influence. We couldn't really put our finger on it because there's still some of that auto-tune, poppy, J-poppy style going on in there, but at the same time, it just feels different. And as much as those songs really are convenience, what label wants to promote what group, I've been enjoying the songs, and I have not been watching the Buu arc of Kai. So I think there's something to be said for all four of those songs. Julian and I were talking too. Now, all four are out now. Which one do we like the most? I think I like them in the order they came out the most. What about you?
I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
It's gone from at the beginning, they're like, oh, we're going to try to at least be as Dragon Ball as possible. Mm-hmm. And then it's just kind of gone the GT route of, well, just what song do we have right now?
That first song, Dear Zarathustra, unfortunately, the Dragon Ball related lyrics aren't in the TV version. It's that second verse that they start talking about Boo and I think Candy and stuff. Definitely check out Julian's translation of the lyrics. And I think depending on the day, I'm not sure if I like Junjo, Pure Heart, or Oh Yeah the most. So maybe it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 2, 4. Not entirely sure. What do you think about the latest song, Galaxy?
I'm impartial. I don't hate the same way. But I don't love it. Yeah. It's just kind of, it's a song and it's a decent song in its own right, but
it's not doing a whole lot for me, but I don't actively dislike it.
That's a good way to put it.
All right. Did you get any cool packages from Julian lately? I think you did.
I did. I got 5 new issues of Weekly Jump. Yeah. A couple of them have some nice posters. Got some calendars, Dragon Ball calendars.
Nice.
So a lot of them are ones that you can find in Daizenshuu 1 or the Chogashu. So it's just nice having it. The poster is literally the size of the book, if not bigger.
Yeah.
So it's in its full glory.
Let me ask you this. The stuff that he's sending you, I know there's particular ones that he's on the lookout for, but the stuff that he's been collecting lately, is it important stuff? I know a lot of it has been color chapter stuff. Some of the other ones, are there any particular reasons, rhyme or reason to them?
To begin with, what we were shooting for was mostly chapters that we've never seen title pages for. Things like that. And then after that, now he's really been focusing on color chapters, and every once in a while he'll pick one up that either Dragon Ball is on the cover or Dragon Ball has some sort of feature, such as like I was talking about, a poster or a calendar, something like that we know is going to be in there, or he just happens to willy-nilly buy one just for the hell of it because it's super cheap.
Yeah, you said something about title pages. That reminds me. I can't remember if we mentioned this on the podcast because we've been so sporadic over the last couple months. Tell folks about what you did to restore a title page and why.
Okay, so when was this? Way back in 1985, when the 12th issue came out of 1985 Weekly Shonen Jump, there was a contest that had occurred where people could rank all the different title pages that Toriyama had drawn for Dragon Ball up until that point. Well, this chapter title page was basically half size, and the bottom half was only for the results of this vote, essentially. So it's never been reprinted in the Tankobon, the Kanzenban, anywhere else. It's only ever been available in Weekly Shonen Jump. So Julian just happened to find a copy, and actually he sent me 2 copies so that I could
destroy one.
Destroy one.
Right.
To scan it. And so I scanned it in to Photoshop, and I went through by hand and basically inked everything back over kind of myself, restored everything to the best I could without demolishing the integrity of the original. And I think it came out really, really nice. So if you go to the chapter 12 page on the website, it's up there. You can view a larger version of it. And yeah, it's pretty much the only digital copy online that I have ever seen.
And so what you're saying is in the Tankobon and the Kanzenban reprints, what's down at the bottom instead of these results? Just nothing?
Well, nothing appeared there because they actually never reprinted the entire page as a whole. It's only ever available in Weekly Shonen Jump. In the Tankobon and the Kanzenban, they actually moved the original title page for Chapter 13 to take the place of Chapter 12, which was kind of funny because then it leaves Chapter 13 without a title page. And if you look at it, Kame Sennin on the Chapter 13 title page is actually holding the Basho fan, the banana fan, which doesn't make an appearance until Chapter 13, yet it's used on the title page of what they now call Chapter 12. So there's always something a little bit weird going on there, but it's really nice to finally have the actual Chapter 12 title page. Has never been reprinted anywhere. The illustration itself has never even been reprinted, which was always kind of odd.
Very nice.
So it was a fun project. It only took me, 6 months, 5 months.
I mean, on and off, but still.
Oh yeah, I would work on it for one night a week, and then I'd not work on it for a month.
Right.
Yeah. And it would mostly be like Julian bugging me. Hey, have you worked on that again? Oh, yeah, maybe I should do that.
Yeah, and on the flip side, the two of us, I was like, hey, Julian, that thing we talked about a week ago, did you do that yet?
We all get very one track.
We do. And it's usually not what the other person needs at that moment.
Yep.
But so be it. All right. Well, those are more stories than I was expecting at the top, but it's good to catch up on that kind of stuff. I say right now, we transition. Let's talk some Dragon Ball news. It's been busy with both the Xenoverse and Revival of F this last week. Let's start with the video game news. We were anticipating a lot of this stuff. We're very, very close to the Japanese release that's still set for February 5th for Dragon Ball Xenoverse over there. So we're right up against some of the magazines that are due out and coming out, and what are they going to spill the beans on before the game comes out. And we did get that glimpse of what we assume is going to be this character Demigra that Julian and I hinted at last week. We do have the shot up from the March 2015 V-Jump. Also, as a part of this, some other stuff that was announced. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Ishinran, the One-Star Dragon, they're going to be in the game as well. Here's the really interesting thing. We're kind of swapping what Japan is getting in terms of additional content, whereas for us, the pre-order bonus is Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. It's not that way over in Japan. You actually get him as a bonus if you order the strategy guide for the game. The strategy guide will come up with some extra stuff too. And I guess that ties us into the big announcement for Xenoverse, which is really worldwide, although I haven't really seen much in the way of Japan details. And that's the DLC that's coming to it. We're getting not only real DLC for Dragon Ball games for the first time, but they're doing the season pass. And if you're not into the gaming scene, a season pass is usually a collection of upcoming downloadable content. And if you buy it all up front, you get a little bit of a reduced price. Bandai Namco has announced 3 packs of DLC for the game, and the season pass will save you $5. They're $9.99 each. If you buy the season pass up front, you get it for about $25, $24.99. So the interesting thing here is Jocko is coming. That's the Patrol Perk pre-order bonus in Japan. We're getting that as the 3rd DLC pack. But the first one, which is going to be available in March, will be 3 new playable characters, and they're all from GT. You get the GT versions of Goku, Pan, and Trunks, and you get some more Time Patrol quests and some special moves and costume stuff. Then the second pack, second and the third, they don't have a date for yet. Second pack just says right now, exclusive playable characters, quests, special moves, and costumes, so more of the same. And then DLC pack 3, which is going to be coming later, is appears to be exactly that patrol perk with Kami Sennin set, the Jocko. I think they called him Jocko the Space Patroller. I feel like, guys, it was written in English in Japan. I don't know how difficult this is.
It's always as difficult as you make it.
And highly exclusive content. So DLC packs come into the game, and we did get screenshots of some of the GT stuff there. So Xenoverse is kicking into high gear. We did have that 1 week delay for pretty much everywhere outside Japan. So we'll be getting it the end of February as they get it the beginning of February. And here we are on January 25th. I still haven't decided if I'm going to buy the Japanese version. I'm really close because I want to watch whatever.
You know you will in the end.
I know I will. So I want to watch whatever the special feature is as soon as I can. I don't want to wait that extra month. So
Mike.
Yepers. I think that's it for Xenoverse. I want to talk some Japan stuff. Kind of have 2 things here. One we just posted about. We'll get to movie stuff. But Heath, I did want to check in with you. There was an official apology that was just put out. What was this?
You saw my tweet?
Yes, I did. What's going on?
All right. So on January 6th, I believe it was, Toei Animation released the Artificial Human and Cell Arc box set. They were coming out in Blu-rays and DVDs.
This is for Kai.
Basically, they took all of the older sets they had originally released, and they're just cramming them into one box. It all has the Kikuchi score. You know, they've redone all that. But the fun part is they haven't gone back through and actually corrected any of the errors in name spellings in the credits. So if you bought the box, you got this nice little note card size piece of paper that says, we're going to issue an apology and a correction. We went ahead and miscredited Fuji TV publicist Tomoko Tumagai. They basically misspelled her name, and then they said, and we also didn't go back through the box and correct it, but these are the episodes where we spelled it wrong and it should be this.
Was it just the one name, or there are other names too?
Well, they only addressed the one, but that's the funny part, is because in the 98th episode,
yes, I remember
there's a
that.
Misspelling.
Yeah.
Not only did they not acknowledge it, they also didn't correct it. So there's other ones that they hadn't gone back and fixed, but it was kind of we don't really care at this point, so we're just going to give you a sheet of paper. And they weren't going to spend the money to go back in and edit all of the Blu-rays and DVDs.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, it was just, you unbox it and you're like, what's this slip? Oh my God. I thought it was humorous. That's about it.
Well, that takes us to revival of F News. And really, there's 2 things here. One is just a list of the preview screenings that Julian went through and detailed. And I see he's up to 9 entries to try and get into a preview screening. So hopefully his odds are pretty good there. But then Heath, the fun news, this was literally just a couple hours ago at this point. We got some returning characters in the movie. I'm not sure we were expecting them.
I was actually quite surprised that they were coming back, because it seemed like last time for Battle of Gods, they were more incorporated as goof characters just from Toriyama's aspect. Like, he wanted to bring back more of a lighthearted nature into the movie, which originally was set as a very dark toned
right.
movie.
And we can say that this group of characters, per the original draft, was just going to be a random group of thugs. And it was when Toriyama came in, he said, if we're going to have characters, might as well be people we know. And that's how we got them. Heath, who is set to return in Revival of F?
The greatest character of all time, Pilaf and his minions.
That's right. So good.
It's the Pilaf gang is coming back. They're all together. For me, I know we've had a lot of reaction from people about it. And for me, it's more of I'm just glad to have the voice actors back because I love listening to them so much.
They're all so good.
So we will see what type of role they actually play in the movie.
And I guess we can say that Shigeru Chiba actually tweeted about this too, who's the voice for Pilaf. And you know him from so many other roles in Japan. I won't even start listing them.
You could never list them all.
There's so many. But it was also Eiko Yamada who kind of broke the news about the extended edition of Battle of Gods last year. She's the one putting up photos and stuff. It's pretty great.
It's really humorous, at least to me, that she is not very involved in the anime industry much anymore these days.
No.
Yet she's the one that, like, when she gets together with this group, this cast, she's the one that starts divulging.
I mean, let's be clear.
Talking about it.
She comes in, she's one of 3 characters. The other actors she's with are Shigeru Chiba and Tessho Genda. I mean, these are some of the biggest voice actors in Japan. If you were her, you're coming in like psyched every chance you get to be with these people.
And it sounds like they had a lot of fun. I mean, it was just neat because Chiba throughout, like he had such delight, being great King Pilaf today, and he had a lot of fun. But then Eiko Yamada, when she tweeted hers out, she took it on as though she were actually Mai.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird because she's just like, the 3 of us got together and we're such long-time acquaintances and we had so much fun. And so it's neat to see those sort of things. But I am very interested to see what type of role they play. I mean, I have my theories, well, not theories, what I would want to see. I know we have plenty of people on the forum and people that have tweeted at us saying, this is what I'm hoping for. And I tend to agree with some of them. Not so much with others, and I know some people are just being funny.
So what we're going to do right now is I did ask on Twitter recently. We got a bunch of responses. Heath, I'm going to run through these. I want your gut reaction to some of these thoughts. AJ says, small cameo within the first 20 minutes and then cast aside in favor of more dramatic Frieza things.
I'm pretty much spot on with a lot of that. I would just want a little bit maybe at the end, maybe like a 30-second something.
All right.
But yeah.
We've got Smallest Lou Man here. I'd love for them to try and get on Frieza's good side. The chance for the gang to stumble around in battle armor would be great.
Okay, now I'm on board with this one too.
All right. We're getting a multi-part one here from Peter. He's got the whole thing all figured out. I want an epic battle of good and evil to take place, and when Frieza takes control of the battle and all hope seems lost, Pilaf and crew swoop in to one-shot Frieza and his godly powers into oblivion. Then Shu, or Soba, to look to the camera and simply say, well, I guess every dog does have his day. Everyone laughs, credits, boom.
I love the fact that he had to throw in Soba.
Amazing.
For the hell of it. Man, that, how many people would be so mad, which would make it like the best thing ever.
I agree. All right. Navi's Pimp says Pilaf should defeat Frieza, but seriously, I want them to be around with the rest of the characters, but not in a main role.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. More of a background, but still there interacting. I think there is some great dialogue that could be had.
I certainly hope so. See, Sean Kaboom says, is it weird of me to hope for more cute and funny Trunks/My moments? No, really. Is it weird?
It is totally weird, but I approve.
I think it'll continue. I think so.
I think so. I don't know how they could have them in the movie and have... I think it'd be great if they play it off like through the majority of the film, like 95% of it, where they're 2 kids that, like we like each other, but they're staying on the other side of the room. And you're just getting looks.
Well,
I don't know why. I think that would just be hilarious.
Here's a question in the middle of these responses I have for you. You think they're still going to be kids?
I don't know. That is my other question. Because I really think at this point, maybe they've found the Dragon Balls and now they're adults again.
Maybe.
And then that really complicates things.
Well, then it just makes GT easily.
And it also kind of, ties into GT.
See, David says, Pilaf rants about world domination, Frieza death beams them, and Boo becomes a Super Majin God out of anger over Shu's death. More dogs getting hit here.
That one kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Let's see. Joseph says, I want them to bring Cell back, who then beats Frieza. This is all in the first 20 minutes of the movie, by the way. That's when you find out Cell is the main villain of the movie.
Now, that is a twist I could get behind.
Let's see. We got a couple more. Jacob says, Pilaf tries to arrange a marriage between Mai and Trunks so he can enjoy Bluma's family fortune.
I could see that as very plausible.
Let's see. And then finally from Kevin here, they replace the Ginyu squad.
That could totally work, especially if a lot of people forget about the whole Piccolo Daimao sort of situation where they're basically bowing down to him and doing whatever he wants because he's powerful, and they think that they might get some nice wealth, world domination sort of stuff out of it. I could very much see that happening here.
I'm on board for that, and Ginyu Frog still kicking around somewhere, right?
Oh my god. Can Ginyu Frog just die?
All right, man. That's going to wrap up our news and your response to the news, so we're going to take it over to our topic for the week. Heath, filler it's a thing. If you're into shonen, you kind of have to deal with it.
It's a thing that all fans really love. They just don't want to admit it.
Well, there is a lot of, people always point to, I love the driving episode. And there's everyone who's not even a Dragon Ball fan knows and loves the driving episode. But when we're talking about filler, it's generally stuff like the padding, the spaced out long moments of staring. And then you get things like filler arcs, like the Garlic Jr. arc and the Afterlife tournament. Dragon Ball is generally pretty good about, well, I say good, but what it does is instead pads things out as opposed to inserting entirely new long-running filler arcs as opposed to something like Naruto, which had, 100 episodes of just new material.
I think it had an entire straight year at one point.
Yeah, that might even be 2 years.
That's about where I stopped. Every shonen series pretty much falls victim to this.
It's just a part of the business model, really.
I was going to say, it's also part of the genre because you run into this situation where to appeal to young boys and men, a lot of these series actually involve some sort of fighting, hand-to-hand combat, what have you, and there is pretty much no dialogue.
Right.
So sometimes when you're doing an animated adaptation of that, it's very hard to not have dialogue and just have people fighting constantly, and you go through chapters so fast.
That's the thing. If you adapt that straight,
you have to have, exactly. You could do 5 straight fighting chapters in one episode, but then you've just gotten rid of over a month's worth of material.
Right.
And it just seems like quite a waste. So they had to figure out something to do, and this was their solution.
What we're going to talk about is Dragon Ball and what its stats were in terms of when it was catching up, what it did to alleviate that catching up, and what people think of as maybe the worst moment in the series. It's the big joke, the 5 minutes on Namek, was that part of this problem with catching up. And Heath, what you did is you dove into, all right, what were the original chapter publication dates and where was the series at that point? And you kind of have this ongoing chart and spreadsheet, full-on data of what was when at what point, and we can really take a look at what did they do and why do we think we did that. So we kind of extrapolate that data out and then form an opinion on it. That's what we do here on the show. Heath, Dragon Ball actually didn't start as quickly as it could have in terms of an animated adaptation. They let it build up a little bit and they were okay for a while. So we know that it started in November of 1984. The TV series didn't start till, February 86?
February 26th, I believe, 1986.
So
yes,
there's a year and change there they had of backlog of material. So it kind of set the stage for us. How was it going for a while in those early chapters, early months, early years?
So at the beginning of Dragon Ball, they actually stuck fairly close to a chapter per episode sort of basis. And they went through a lot of chapters at the beginning because they had a lot of backlog material that they could use, and they were already far enough ahead in the manga that the anime staff knew where the series was going, which was an eventual problem that they would run into.
Right, where they didn't.
Things would eventually get so close, and they would go to Toriyama, who is notorious for not planning ahead and coming up with the next week's story almost 2 or 3 days before he would storyboard it.
Yeah.
So we're talking about maybe 2 weeks in advance, the anime staff may know kind of what's going on. But we have so many accounts of Toriyama not even knowing who is going to win any of the Budokai tournaments. So it's kind of humorous from that aspect. To rely on someone that has almost no reliability story-wise.
Yeah, you can't plan around that. I want to talk about the Pilaf arc in particular. You're saying you're going roughly around a chapter per episode. That's a really brisk pace. But when you think about it, there was still a lot of good filler material in there. In the manga, you don't see Pilaf for a long time in that arc. Comparatively speaking, they bring those characters in pretty quickly in the TV version. Then there's great scenes like him pulling the knife on, what is the alligator, the crocodile.
Who's just sunbathing
on
outside
Kami-sen's
house.
Yeah, I mean, there's good material in there, and it was written in a way where it really felt tightly integrated into the story. So they were moving at a brisk pace while still inserting stuff, and you can really tell that if they didn't even insert just that little amount, they would be blowing through things even more quickly.
Right, which actually was a good thing at the beginning.
I
think
sure.
It really, really helped them. And I don't know if maybe in North America at least, it's just people aren't as quite familiar with the beginning of the series as they are with Dragon Ball Z, which is common not only within the United States, but just internationally. It's by far the more popular of the three series. The filler in between all of them is so different, I feel like.
Yeah, it is.
I think that lends to the credibility of what the anime staff was doing. And also just the fact that at the beginning, a lot of it was training and hand-to-hand martial arts combat. And Dragon Ball Z was a little different.
That early stuff, those early stories, you can really just show them doing whatever you want and it fits in, as opposed to some of the later stuff where things get so galactic in scale that you try writing around some of that stuff and you run into problems. All right, so we set the stage for these early chapters. How were things progressing for a while?
Well, for a while, it was actually pretty good. It was fairly steady. If you look at the chart that's in the magazine that I put together, this graph, it's always on the decline, which as soon as an anime adaptation starts, there's always going to be a decline. But there's always what I kind of call the critical point, which is the halfway mark. When Dragon Ball started, it was already 62 chapters into the manga series.
Okay.
So you're thinking, we got plenty of time here. But the question is, how long will it take us to either get rid of all of this material or cut it in half? And just from going by the chart, I noticed a trend of they really tried to get back up to that halfway point, because when you're sitting around 30 chapters and you're thinking about 4 chapters a month, roughly, 4 weeks a month, that puts you at a pretty good point. You can plan ahead. You know what you can do story-wise. And we see it almost right off the bat initially with Shu. We referenced this earlier, Shu and Soba, where Toriyama didn't realize he had already named the character in the anime because they had a far enough look ahead that they could say, hey, we're going to use this character as a filler character at the beginning.
What's his name?
But he needs a name. So then you start to run into those sorts of situations, which I've always looked at as kind of with a little bit of fondness to Dragon Ball, because that's just who Toriyama is. And these things happen and you just kind of scratch your head and go, yeah, that's Toriyama. But the steady decline goes all the way down. And then basically once we hit April 1989, around when Dragon Ball Z begins, that's when we really start to notice more filler really coming in. We've had it before.
Yeah, I actually want to stop you right there, because a lot of people like to talk about the first series and say there's basically no filler. I mean, yeah, there's the padding, but there's nothing like the Garlic Jr. arc or the Afterlife tournament. And that's not entirely true. Is it after the 22nd Budokai when Goku kind of takes off in his training and eventually he makes his way to God and all that stuff? There's some extra stuff there.
Yeah, well, even before that, he goes to Urnai Baba right after the Red Ribbon Army.
Right. I mean, that
fiasco.
all just transitions into each other there.
He goes right into this solo training sort of thing.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of there, yeah.
In preparation for the Budokai. Yeah, that's where, and they even pull in some Journey to the West references.
Right, that's the thing I'm most familiar with.
He goes to the Demon Realm, things like that. Yeah. So we have these little arcs of filler.
But
there's another
little.
one, right. where he's training in heaven before he fights Ma Jr.
Right.
That's another one. Then we have the wedding dress stuff with Yu Mao at the end.
More Journey to the West stuff.
Anin. I love the Journey to the West references.
I do too.
Ball. But yeah, it is there, but it's very much... I don't even know if I can put a finger on it. It's very much in line with the story at the time. And not that it isn't in Dragon Ball Z, but it ties in so well.
Yeah, the way I would describe them all is they're all part of the transition, rather being separate from that transition going on.
Right.
You think about the Garlic Jr. arc. Yeah, it's within a transition period, but it's completely standalone. It doesn't affect the events before or after. Goku training, I mean, as weak as it is, that is a connection to I'm heading to a tournament. This is my preparation for the tournament. And the Afterlife tournament's the same thing. It's like we got these years in between. Here's the thing Goku was doing during that time.
I guess that's a good way to put it. It's more easy to tie into the story than what is in Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
And even in the Saiyan arc at the beginning, we have so many episodes of Gohan running around doing various things.
Right.
And there's nothing really wrong with it, but the problem for me has always been it lies within the very center of this not very long arc if you read it in the manga. I mean, It's not terribly long, and it's almost twice as long in the anime.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we saw that with the Kai version, which cut 35, 36 episodes down to, what was it, 18? 16, even 16, yeah. So, I mean, you get rid of the robot, you get rid of the orphans, and one's good, one's bad, respectively, right there, and you cut out a lot of stuff. At the same time, that was one of the only instances where it was all filler, but it was all very purposeful. That being grow Gohan as a character.
So the whole goal of this research project that I put together was really, in large part, Julian helped me quite a bit because I had already started it long ago, but I was always using the sale dates of Shonen Jump, and now Julian got me the actual... I was using the cover dates. Julian got me the actual sale dates.
Right. I guess we can say it's similar to how V-Jump works, where it's dated for March 2015, but it came out January 21st. Same thing with Weekly Shonen Jump, where it comes out on this date, but it's forward dated for being, this is the jump for the week of this.
Well, it's an anthology, and there's 52 weeks in a year, so all they're doing is saying, oh, this is the first week issue, but the actual release dates that they use have nothing to do with the year.
Yeah, you buy it a week or two ahead of that.
What we did was, once we had those dates, we could figure out the difference in between when, on any given week, the time period between the anime episode that week and what chapters it comprised, and the manga chapter that came out that exact same week. So then we get a differential in the number of chapters in between those points. And that's mostly where this graph comes from. So we can tell how much manga material was still out there at that point when any given episode.
Got it.
And from there, what I wanted to do was actually just go through the chart and say, okay, well now I have a chart with dates and manga chapters. So I can go through any date and just look at, well, what was the backlog at that point? And it's neat because you can take, anybody can do it. It's a little hard with the graph we provided. But
that's true.
You can take any date of, hey, I want to know when this episode came out, why they made this obscene filler episode that I hate, and you can go look at the chart and be like, oh, there's almost no material out there, so they had to do it.
Usually it's for a reason. Okay, so that's good to know. So we're into the Saiyan arc. How are things looking in terms of material here?
So around the Saiyan arc, we're well below the halfway point.
Oh, okay.
And they needed to do something.
So just to reiterate, when you're talking about a halfway point, you're saying that when Dragon Ball started, they had about 60 chapters. So when you're saying halfway point, is that like 30-ish chapters where they're at?
Right. And at this point, they're actually down more closer to like 25, 20.
Gotcha. So they only have that much to work with before they are literally caught up to where the manga is being published. Got it.
And the other fun part, I guess, I think I talk about it in the article. I was just curious myself, like, a really good experiment would be, what if I just subtracted out all of the weeks where an episode didn't air and then just go through and then I cut out all of the filler as if filler episodes never existed. And it was amazing how fast the anime caught up with the manga.
So it's lucky for them to get those occasional holiday or baseball games or something else going on. Those are, just like an extra week to work on something.
So, and I think Masako Nozawa actually said in an interview once, she's like, yeah, I always thought that when we had weeks off, that the anime staff was working, but it would turn out that they would have the week off too. So when we'd come in to record, we'd still have the same old stuff on the screen. They wouldn't be any farther ahead of us.
I knew, right.
It's like, oh, that sucks.
All right. So keep going. How do things progress from here? Because we're heading toward what people ask about the most, which is the Frieza arc, specifically the end of it.
Right. So we have these numerous instances of these short little filler arcs that we've seen all throughout the series. And we come to the Frieza arc, which is one thing that people have always brought up. Oh, it's so drawn out. It just seems like it takes forever. It has to be all filler. That's what you would think. Now, there is filler in there, but I feel like there's not quite as much filler as what you think there is when you actually look at the numbers and sit down and figure it out, especially when you consider we just came off a little bit of, I think, in the Namek. There's
the early stuff.
We had
the space pirates,
fake Namek, and we had space pirate. Yeah, all that stuff. So we've already had kind of a little cushion, and then throughout, we get some Ginyu filler, we get frog filler. Yep, Bulma has to go find the crab, whatnot.
Bulma and the crabs. I mean, that's one of the worst offenders because, I mean, if you were watching it in the original syndication here in North America, Funimation's first dub, yes, it was Funimation's first dub. I always have to say that, in 96 through 98. There were a bunch of breaks that we had. One was, of course, after the first season, 26, end of the Saiyan arc. And then the next significant break happened, and then we waited a couple months, and then the first new episode to come back after that break was Bulma and the Crabs. I'm like, son of a bitch, I waited all this time for this. So that's why we hate it more than anyone else.
That's why you hate it.
Why? Are you in love with the
I think
crabs?
It's the most amazing thing ever.
All right, well, you can just leave the show right now.
No.
All right, anyway.
So what I called the first true milestone occurs in August of 1987.
Okay.
So this is just a year and a half after Dragon Ball Z had premiered, or after Dragon Ball had premiered. And that's the point where the initial backlog has gone from 62 to 31. So essentially they've cut it completely in half.
Got it.
And it's only taken them a year and a half. And this is a 10-year series.
Right.
So just a little perspective there. And then from that point, we see all these little pieces of fillers like we were talking about. And then in September 1989, which was the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, then the chapter gap never, ever recovered, essentially. It always hovered somewhere between 10 to 20 chapters until the very end of the series.
10, that's rough.
Yeah, so you can see at that point why people complain so much more about Dragon Ball Z than they do Dragon Ball. Not only from what we talked about previously of just how well the filler material actually fits in with Dragon Ball, but they had to use filler throughout Dragon Ball Z to really pad things out as much as they possibly could. You're also talking about a very limited staff that,
of course,
trying to be as creative as possible.
Yeah, with an original author who's, he's creative, but he's not planning that creativity. He can't really help him too much. I mean, he did. We got ideas he tossed out there, like Yamcha being a baseball player, and he would do some sketches and stuff and maybe give him a rough idea. But, I mean, he wasn't writing these arcs for them.
Well, and it seems like if you go back, we have a page in the production guide on the website of Toriyama's contributions to the anime. And you'll notice that beyond the Saiyan arc, it's very limited.
It is, yeah.
It seems like he started to get a lot busier. Dragon Quest was getting a lot more popular, so he was tied up with that. He was doing one-shots. And
to the mid-90s.
He was helping with and he was helping with movie
stuff, right? Yeah, now that you think about it, or now that you mention it, I go back and I think, okay, Gregory, Yamcha baseball player, a King Vegeta sketch. Like we're into early Namek stuff there, but that's about it.
Yeah, when he starts to even go a little farther on, he would maybe shoot them an idea, but he wouldn't give them much information at all, or he'd just shoot a sketch over to his editor. So yeah, he just got really busy at that point. So it's not all too surprising he got burnt out. But
so let's stick Frieza arc here. How are things going? I mean, this is what we're talking about. It feels so padded, and you've already just said it's not as padded as you think it is, but there's still a lot of problems going on here, right?
Mm-hmm. In June 1991, that is when the series hit its smallest chapter gap, which is what I call it, the gap between where the anime is and where the manga is at the time. And that was 10 chapters.
And where in the series is this?
Oh, that's the fun part, is it coincidentally or not, I have no idea, but I use the word anyway.
Okay.
Occurred with the broadcast of Dragon Ball Z episode 97.
Ooh, so we're 2 after the Super Saiyan transformation.
Yes, for those who are unaware of episodes.
I mean,
95.
I know 95.
Goku transforms. 96, giant hair Super
Worst
Saiyan Goku.
episode animation ever. Oh my God, it's so bad.
And then 97, animation comes back on. But that is the week that they hit an all-time low.
Wow.
So basically right when Goku transforms into the legendary Super Saiyan, boom, we got to use filler because we only have like 2 months of material left. And then what happens right when they're like, okay, well, we stretched this out. We finished the Frieza arc. Goku won. He went off. We have to do Garlic Jr.
And they did have some filler there. You did have, I always think, too, Gohan coming back. And that fuels the flames of did Goku die there because Gohan doesn't actually come back in the manga. All that
And then he
kind of
got wished
stuff.
back.
But yeah, you're right. Like they hit that limit. It's we have to do something now. And that's where we got Garlic Jr.
And it's led to so many jokes of, 5 minutes takes 5 years of Dragon Ball Z and
right. But talk about the pacing of the manga versus the anime there. What I remember you saying is they're still moving at that point around a chapter per episode. It's just that a lot of that, what you think of as boring stuff, is kind of in the manga too.
So, well, which goes back to what I was harping on earlier of just the typical shonen genre of we're fighting, you stop for a second to say, well, I've only been using 50% of my power, and then you go back to fighting. There's not a lot of dialogue, and they kind of had to stretch some of that out.
And they did that.
And you also get like the Ginyu Special Squad showing up on North Kaio's planet.
And I also think back to the scene of, was it Kamisenin and Oolong? They're going to take off in the spaceship. They're going to go help. We get that, exposition back on Earth kind of stuff. And it's still paced relatively well. It just feels really bad.
So at that point, they were, up until that point, I should say, they were averaging like a 1.3 chapters per episode.
That's brisk.
Which, if you think about it, isn't that bad. And you're thinking, well, gosh, they really must have gone to what, like half a chapter per episode? Because man, that 5 minutes took forever. Well, the 5 minutes kind of takes forever in the manga too, especially if you look at the fact of how many chapters that takes.
Yeah.
And then you think of how many weeks did it take to release all of those chapters.
Right. Yeah, we have the convenience of always reading it just in order.
So at that point, when they hit the lowest chapter gap at 10, they dropped down to a single chapter per episode. So what that actually did was kind of canceled out the effects of releasing a chapter per week, because then they could draw it out as long as they could. Because as long as a chapter came out every week and they released a single chapter per episode,
right,
they would never drop in backlog material.
Right. And you insert Garlic, you get, was it 8 or 9 episodes worth of extra stuff there?
And so if you look at the chart, it jumps right back up. They get their backlog back up of, an extra 2.5 months on top of what they already had.
Still not that
boom,
magical.
You're back in business.
Still not that magical halfway point that you were talking about earlier, or about 30. 20 is better than 10.
And then really the only time it eventually climbs back up and we start to look fairly decent is when you get towards the end of the anime series. And that's mostly because, well, one, the Majin Buu arc took more weeks off than any other time in history of Dragon Ball until GT came along.
And what was that stuff? Was it baseball games, that kind of stuff?
Baseball games. I think one was the Olympics.
Okay,
it kind of fell.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very interesting because if you go back and look how many weeks they took off, I think there was one point. Oh, I can't remember what it was. I think it was April or March 95. That
so very toward the end.
That not a single episode aired within the month itself.
Yeah, I was thinking there's
there's
a part of GT where there's I think an entire month where there's no episodes too. And then there's one and there's like another 2 off or something like that.
But I think that more had to do with their broadcasting their lineup at the time.
And it worked out for them. And even then, the Boo arc
it definitely
still
worked
feels slow. And as we've been seeing with the Kai-ification of it, I mean, there's probably more they could be doing. But as it got to the halfway point in the Boo arc of Kai, they're not cutting as much as they probably could, right? Because, I mean, that just is the show. It's being adapted.
And, Kai is its own beast.
And we've been talking about that. How's your categories and layouts and Kai documentation? How's that treating you?
Oh, it came to a utter standstill.
I don't blame you.
Super Saiyan 3 came out.
Is that where we are? I have no idea.
Oh, we're way past that.
Oh, okay.
It kind of stopped. I was like, I'll cover up till here. And then I totally got caught up with other things and the wiki, and it's just been an utter... I will get to that at some point. I have people everything I need. I don't have the time to sit down and just make pages. So.
I hear you. So I guess we've brought ourselves to the end of the series, and then we get to GT, which is anime only.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about filler in GT for a minute, even though there's really no such thing, because it's an anime original and they can tell whatever story they want to tell? There's definitely still a couple points in GT that feel like filler. There was one episode in particular, I think it might be my favorite GT episode. I like the final episode a lot, but it's the random Budokai they have toward the end. I think it's the episode after Super 17 ends. We get Papaya Man. That is such a filler feeling kind of episode. And at the same time, I feel like they had the most fun with that episode.
I know.
It's like the B staff got a chance to do something that didn't relate to the A staff's just boring ass story stuff going on. And it felt great.
I always enjoyed that episode, but it definitely has a feeling of, well, we're going to transition this and we're not quite sure how to do it. So we're going to go back to the old school way and we're just going to have a tournament.
Throw something in between. That's right.
And it kind of falls into the guise of the Majin Buu arc where you're like, hey, look, we're having a tournament. And then it turns into something else.
What final takeaways do you want to give people from the research here and what we've looked at and what people think the problem was and what maybe was the problem or was not the problem? That's like 20 questions all rolled into a nonsensical statement.
Yeah.
So do whatever you can with that.
I guess my biggest takeaway, which is something that I think we all already knew, was that the anime would have caught up with manga.
Yeah.
But I always felt weird when people would just say, hey, this is what would have happened. That's why filler exists. Well, I don't know. I've seen other series where, like you were mentioning earlier, Naruto, when you have years in a row of just solid filler, sometimes it's hard to justify that as, well, they just are trying to prevent it. Because what's going to happen when the series starts back up again?
You're either going to get people to come back or you're going to have a case like Kenshin. After Kyoto arc, you get the Christian arc. People didn't come back. That series died because people gave up on it. You didn't get the Inishi stuff until these terrible OVA episodes years later.
That's about where I even stop anytime I watch the anime.
Kenshin?
I don't go much beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. You have to just read the manga after that. The Revenge arc's actually really good in the manga, and it's got ties from the previous arc. It's good stuff. But yeah, so you have an instance like Kenshin where it did not recover and never could recover. And these latest movie OVA retellings are just complete garbage. So yeah, what we all wanted to see was a Shishio sex scene. Come on. Like, really? Anyway, so you get a series like Kenshin that couldn't recover. You get a series like Naruto, which thankfully was strong enough.
But I still feel like it lost people because I know plenty of people that have not watched since then. I never did.
I always say that I didn't even make it to the Majin Sasuke arc. I don't know what you would call it. But it was like the filler before the filler. Like the filler that people talk about. I think there's like a boat race in a town or something. Like I never made it past that. So I don't know what the story in Naruto is beyond that. And it sucks because I love the characters, but it lost me. I couldn't do it.
And then the problem becomes it's such a long running series that once you get behind, I mean, do you really want to spend all that time trying to catch up?
Right.
And that's where that's the biggest pitfall where people go, well, yeah, like One Piece. Gosh, people haven't watched it in like 2 years, yeah, they're not going to go pick it back up.
And I'm not familiar enough with Bleach. I don't know what the hell happened there. But something happened.
The serialization kept going. The anime just stopped.
So, I mean, we've seen all these various shonen, and they're all Shonen Jump properties, and they were all treated in slightly different ways. And you can see what happened with some of them over these last couple decades here.
And in large part, if you think about it, the majority of them, say Bleach, Naruto, Dragon Ball, were all animated by different animation studios.
Yeah. And hey, look at Toriko, which died and gave us Kai back. And then you get something like JoJo's, which if you're not watching JoJo's, what are you doing with your life? Which is the weirdest series. Like, it's so massively popular. And it got an OVA of the most popular part. And then like a theatrical release of part 1, which never even came out on home video. That whole series has just been sitting there. And then yeah, if you come back to it so many years later, people are ravenous for it. I feel like part 1 really, they flew through that material. It's like they want to get to Stardust Crusaders as fast as possible. And they did, but I feel like it really slowed down for part 2. It felt like a good pace, but they're in a good place with JoJo's now, where there's another, 4 or 5 complete series, and one of them super, super long. If it maintains its popularity, JoJo's could be, I don't want to say like the best case scenario, where they can just do the series as they want and not worry about catching up. Because yeah, maybe they will, and then they could just stop there and they'd have done like 6, 7 complete series, and it would be great without having to worry about filler.
The whole thing just essentially relies on how the industry is actually set up in Japan. I mean, that's the biggest pitfall that they have, is not having, and I really hate to say this, not having seasons. Of having people run, they have these series that continuously run.
Yeah, Shonen doesn't
every week
do that.
Yeah, and if people ever want to get rid of filler, that is the only solution. But the problem really is that that's what they do, and I don't think, like, say, Fuji TV, the studios, will ever get away from it, because they get so much advertising money for it.
Well, that's the thing.
To have a weekly running series.
If we haven't made it clear, the business model here, the show is not the product. The show is an advertisement for everything else, including the manga. I mean, we live in a country, the United States of America, where the product is the show. That's what Funimation gets to sell. And yeah, there was a period of time where Dragon Ball was popular enough where they could do toys. They could do American-only video games. But very few shows, very few properties are popular enough, and the Japanese companies are willing to extend that risk to these foreign licensors, licensees, these very deep relationships. Are they going to let them do something like that where the show is not the product? In Japan, the show is just there to remind you to buy everything else and play commercials in the meantime. And yeah, it's great when you get things like Cartoon Network and Toonami that are popular at certain points in time and they can sell commercials. But when you're buying a DBZ home release, that's just Funimation trying to sell you that home release.
Yeah.
Well, Heath, we have officially hit the hour mark here. Actually, as of our raw recording, I have an hour 2. We'll see what that ends up with in the final edit here. So it's been a pleasure to actually do 2 episodes in a row. Since the last episode, I only got around to releasing on a Thursday. We'll see when it is I'm able to get this episode out. We have a blizzard coming, apparently. So I may have some extra time at home that I can dedicate to the show. We'll see how that goes these next couple days.
Well, that would be nice.
So I work the kind of job where just because I'm home doesn't mean I'm not working. So we'll see how it works out.
We live in the day and age where I can also stay home, and I just VPN into work.
Yeah.
They don't like it if you do that a lot. You're not really supposed to, but you totally can.
I mean, you got stuff where you're actually out on site sometimes. That's the kind of thing where you can't be doing that from home, but all the paper pushing, that kind of stuff, you can't be doing. Anyway, so again, it's been a pleasure. Heath, Mr. Hujio, Julie and I talked last week at the end of the show, stuff we got going on. We were plugging all the wiki work you've been doing.
Did you really? I only made it halfway through the last episode.
Did you? Well,
because not because it was terrible. I was very much enjoying it actually, but yeah, children and whatnot.
I understand. Anyway, we talked about content we're all working on, plugging for the site. We did talk about some of the wiki stuff you've been doing. I did just see in the forum today you put up another soliciting, requests, thoughts, hopes, dreams, aspirations for techniques?
Template layouts. Yep, for the various Dragon Ball techniques that we see throughout the series. The fun part is anymore, I've done so many of the layouts, then I just go, maybe I'm missing something. I just need other people to look at it.
Yeah. So check that out if you're a member of the site. I do have a backlog of registrations. I kind of do them in batches. So if you haven't been approved, it's probably coming soon.
And then anytime we get an email, then I just hop on usually.
Right.
Take care of
if
it.
If an extra long period of time goes by, that probably means you looked like spam to the system and you're not there. Don't re-register if you have registered and you're not approved and it's been like a week or something like that. Do use the contact form. We'll take care of it. We'll look into it.
Yeah, when we get like 3 in a row within 30 seconds and they're all the same name with different email addresses.
Yeah, don't do that. It is
I just delete those.
Yeah, I delete them all because that looks like spam. It is a manual process. We do have manual approvals on the site because it's overwhelming, and even though we have cut down spam registrations to a bare minimum, still it's a manual thing. We do it that way. So we talked about your wiki stuff. Julian's got translation stuff. I'm hoping I can approve some of that and get it up quickly. I'm still plugging away in victory mission stuff, news. There's something else I was working on. I always have a feature that I'm working on, and then I think about doing another feature, and we'll see if any of them get done. Then there's another one that Jake had the basis for, then I started porting to pages, and then you started doing images for. Now you're doing wiki.
Well, actually, I've rewritten like half of it.
Yeah, I do that with everything
images,
too.
So.
And that one, I think we're also kind of waiting on the new movie. How's that going to tie into
every
what
time we get close to doing this specific guide, a new movie comes out.
A new
which
guidebook, a new
certain
movie.
characters that we can't do it.
Right. And I always want to go back and do the video game guide, but it's like, Jesus, slow down with these new productions. We need to do some of this stuff.
See, it's another reason why we're starting to lean towards the wiki, because then we'll get that done. People will do our work, and then we can go over and slowly port it over to the site.
I mean, we've talked in the past about
something like that.
What will the wiki be in relation to what a page on the site will be? And that's a larger conversation. We'll talk more about that in the future. But
I think in our heads, it's always been what is on the site is us and what we have personally vetted.
Right. The fact-checked, final, approved.
Yeah. We're working out ways for that to happen.
I'm done.
I think so. Hopefully we can come back next week.
Yeah, that
in
would
some
be nice.
fashion.
Yes. Whether it's another topic we're mining out of the magazine or something different entirely, there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about. There are topics planned. We'll hit them up. Heath, thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. By the end of next week, we'll just have more movie news and Julian will be going insane.
That's right. That was Hujio. We got Julian. We got Jake. Again, my name is Mike VegettoEX. It's been a pleasure being in your ears for 373. See you back next time for 374. www.kanzenshuu.com. Kanzenshuu. Get the website, get the forum, get the chat, get the podcast, get the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Tumblrs, the Google Pluses.
We have cats.
And we got plenty of cats. I'm going to go feed them right now. I'm done. Heath, wrap it up.
Thanks for joining us on this week's Kanzenshuu, the podcast. We'll see you maybe next week.
Babbing, babble.